Just for the record, today is the August 15th, 2017 at 4 p.m. Superintendent?
Thank you, Chairman Soto. We're excited today to bring you some exciting facilities updates. We want to kind of try to be brief on these first couple of things if we can, so that we can really spend some quality time looking at the way plans are developing for Michigan Avenue and Harmony Middle School. As you can see, we've got our construction partners in the room to kind of go over that piece. But Mark is going to start by giving you kind of an update of where we are with the Castaldi update, talk briefly about the redistricting process that he and Rhonda and the team have already spoken with each of you individually, and then move on from there. So,
thank you, Superintendent. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We'll start with a Castaldi update. There's a Castaldi timeline in front of you, and that shows all the milestone dates in working through the process dating back to March. Most current, we completed...
We're doing great. I'm just looking at how ridiculous the state is.
It's been a cumbersome process, but we persevere. We completed site reviews 2 days on the 31st of July and August 1st, very productive, with members of the DOE team, Mark Weigley and Violet Brown. And as a result, they did request additional information, which we promptly provided to them. Most current.
Did you wrap it in red tape and send it to them?
I sent it without delay, and followed up with Mr. Weigley this morning to get an update for our workshop this afternoon. And he has completed assembling the cases for Michigan Ave, Den John, and St. Cloud, and he delivered those cases, presented those to Linda Champion last week, Tuesday, on the 8th. So according to Mr.
Did he say what he recommended? Do you know?
He did not. He is leaving that up to Linda, but he believes that we provided a very compelling case for all three of those. So that is what he shared.
He's the building official, right?
He
Linda's
is
not
the architect for the Office of
No,
Facilities.
she's not a building official. I mean, Linda's a smart lady, but she's not a building official.
Right. She is the deputy commissioner, and so as he explained, the next step is for Linda to present to Commissioner Stewart. He did not have a timeline for that.
Okay.
But I think, Frank, do you have some additional items?
question.
You talked with them as well.
We were advised that, I'll use the words that we used. This has got the highest priority, visibility, and they were looking to try and get everything done by Friday of this week. I just texted the state board chair saying, would you politely go nudge your commissioner with a heart? And so we've been working. I met yesterday with Senator Brandis about fixing this, and I said there's two ways. One, I think it's a complete waste of time, but assuming you don't want to buy into that argument, then buy into an argument that you'll create a requirement, and the state board chair agrees with it, that you got 45 days to process from the time you get it and give an answer to a district. Yea and nay, but you can't sit on it for 4 or 5 months. The governor's reaction was, I'll tell you, why in God's earth would we even be doing that? Then his one deputy chief called and said, well, we're required to do it by statute. I then said, could you tell me what statute? Well, that's what DOE told me. So we're chasing the rabbit somewhat, but at least it's elevated to where everybody who's got a brain is going. At a minimum, 5 months is not acceptable, and we need to, so 3 prongs. At a minimum, can we get a commitment from DOE that, and then the state board going, you got X days to process this. The best of all worlds is they stop requiring it. Because we have some other things Mark and I have talked about that, I mean, because they just, and I haven't seen the rule where they adopted this, but let's assume they didn't do it with a rule. How they come up with, now we're going to say it's a 50-year time frame and not do it by rule. Now you can raise the issue and then they'll say, well, we'll go do a rule, but at least if they do a rule, you have the opportunity to deal with it and say this doesn't work. But that's where we're at, guys.
So what happens, since this is our money, if we ignore them and do it anyway?
You know, I spoke to my inside person at the state auditor's office, who said the way they generally have dealt with that is the auditors come back and say the state should take X dollars away from you because you failed to comply with Y. So arguably.
Where are they gonna take, what fund are they gonna take it from?
Or they'll take it from capital dollars, they'll take it from FT. These guys.
They can take money that's,
It is, it's really, and there's just no due process because the more you fight them, the more they try and figure out. The good thing is, right now, there's a lot of adults who understand this problem for the first time. And one of the things that, I'll talk later about the lawsuit on 7069, is it's getting all the districts to line up, and everybody's talked about Castaldi, but they've never made it an issue. Well, it's a major issue now.
I got a question. Do we
Yes,
know
sir.
if the commissioner, Ms. Champion, and Mr. Weigly are all in the office this week, or are any of them on vacation?
They have indicated that everyone is there
So
this
they're
week.
present. Okay, that's encouraging.
Yes, there were key
Okay.
members out of the office last week, but they're all there this week.
That's very encouraging, thank you.
Yes,
So
sir.
if Friday comes and we don't get the result that we want, what's the next step?
I believe the deadline that we established was September 19th,
Okay.
and we would let it play
But-
out.
Let's say they
Hopefully
come back and
it
say,
won't, But
I will
we
tell
we
you,
don't approve of you doing this.
if Friday doesn't come, then he will be given the governor's cell phone, and I want him to make a call as chairman, saying, look, I'm sitting on a powder, I'll get him prepped for it, but we move it again.
What of the question that Mr. Booth just asked? What if we don't get approved? Have we considered that as a possibility, or it isn't? Is it just a
That's
matter of
kinda where-
time? Or is it or is he
Nobody
correct
wants
that may
us
happen?
to sue anybody, let them sue us.
we have, and then that would mean ditching the plans that we have today and moving to renovations of those existing buildings, which would be
So there's
very
not an appeal
costly
process, there's not
and
waiting.
and not productive, as compared to replacing with new construction.
Can we respectfully ask them to read House Bill 7069, where money goes to charter schools with no review and no anything with tax dollar money? And it completely takes it out and gives it to private companies?
I will do an updated deep dive this week.
Because that seems pretty big divergent in what this thing is and that.
Ricky, I'll do a deep dive this week.
Oh, I was just
What-
asking the-
No, on what, if anything, penalty that they could impose. Years ago, I couldn't find a penalty, so we did something. I gotta just update that research. I was hoping we wouldn't get there, but I think we might get there, so we might as well know the answer, particularly with the one you talked to me about outside on the other. I mean,
How much payroll do we have in the, I mean, we did the custody, I get that. Looks like we've got, I mean, we've done what we had to do, I'm not criticizing. But I mean, can we, relative to this, and I've got to believe other districts are doing it, I think we need to educate people about how much payroll this has taken from us just to get to this point.
And the cost, the increased cost in construction while
Right,
we
I
wait.
mean, right, they don't get the, right, right.
Frank, is it possible that we can have a 10-minute face-to-face instead of a phone call? All right.
Yeah.
All right.
At this
Then we
point in
should- we should
time, there are no
consider doing
additional
that instead.
costs for construction per se. We have design documents completed. We have a CM on board for pre-construction services. So generally speaking, we'll be able to use all that product at a later date. Now, with some of the pre-construction services, that includes taking the project out for bid. We may have to repeat portions of that if we exceed the bid period, which is typically, subs will hold their bids for 30 days.
Why don't we just move forward now? And, we hope we get a good, the outcome we want, but if we don't, we still got to move forward. We've got a mission to do. I think we just move forward.
But we
Correct me
set
if I'm
that
wrong,
date.
Mark,
We set that date.
But we have been moving the process forward. That's why, for example, you got the email this afternoon, even that the selection of the CM particularly for Denjon, that recommendation phase has been finished, and they'll be bringing that to you at the next board meeting. We moved ahead with the contract for Michigan Avenue with both the architect and the CM. So staff is moving forward as if everything is
Okay, so are we
hunky-dory.
encumbering money for pre-construction? So we can tell them to start pre-construction services? I mean, are we-
We've encumbered, but we have not spent. Okay?
Yes.
And that's where the September 19th deadline comes in. If we don't have solid, positive responses by then you would start to risk some potential loss.
Repeated costs for
Yeah.
bidding, activities.
I've got no appetite to risk, I mean, we're being, I think we're being too nice personally. I appreciate what we're doing, I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong. But that's like having Tallahassee tell the county commission where they can put a stop sign.
The problem that we have is that if we don't at least keep the process moving forward on our end, then we risk delaying the project.
Correct.
And remember, for this type of a project, you're not talking about just a month or two. You're looking at a school
school
calendar
year.
cycle.
No, I
So we either
get it.
lose a full semester of getting our folks into Michigan Avenue as a new building, or you potentially lose a full year. So that's why I'd advise staff to go ahead, as if everything is moving forward like we think it's going to happen, in a very optimistic and hopeful way. And if it doesn't, by September the 19th, we'll have a Plan B that we'll bring back to the board.
Why, what's the plan B other than moving forward?
Well, I would comment that we need to, as much as there's emotion tied into this and frustration with the process
And money.
and money, but cooler heads need to prevail. I don't think we want to get into a situation, in my opinion, in something like this to where we're drawing lines in the sand when we don't even really know how we're going to deal with the negative results that could come with that. And so we're all frustrated. We all understand that, we've got a job to do and we're trying to do it. But I would be personally hesitant to say we're going 100 miles an hour, we're full steam ahead, whether it works out our way or not. To the point that Frank was making earlier, we really got to understand the repercussions that come from something like this. And it may not be ideal. Hopefully, wisdom will prevail. I know your response to that. Wisdom will prevail in Tallahassee. But I'd be personally adverse to us just saying we're doing what we want, whether they like it or not. We wouldn't allow that to happen with anybody that works within our structure. And we would have an adverse reaction if some principal didn't like what the superintendent said and said, I'm just going to do it anyway because I need to do what I got to do. And so I think we need to be a little bit cooler and calmer about that. The other part then becomes engaging our delegation as well as engaging other key stakeholders that could help. I'll be with Senator Latvala in a day or two. I can talk to him again, and he's been a friend of Osceola. I mean, I'll be with Senator Stargell in a couple days. I can talk to her again. I mean, there's a number of key people that each one of us interface with that could help maybe elevate our concern in addition to what Frank's already doing. And then I think the next part becomes having to communicate with constituents and having constituents help carry the torch with us as well. We talk about how do we engage the community expressing concern in Tallahassee that you have a school board that's locally elected, expending local dollars, and is impeded with progress because of state rulemaking and state policy. And there may be opportunity for that as well as a different approach. And that may be what Plan B is. We've gotten to the point where we can't go any further, and now it's time that we start to broaden our base a little bit and work a little bit more strategically to help raise the voice in Tallahassee with what our concerns
Had
are.
we not gone to the voters and asked them to vote for a half-penny sales tax, and they overwhelmingly did it, and those are the biggest stakeholders I care about. They told us what they wanted and what they needed, and we're doing that. And now we've got an impediment by people who don't vote here, don't live here, aren't elected to represent anybody. I appreciate the prudence that you apply to it, and I appreciate the emotion that you'd like to take out of it, and I'm taking the emotion out. But I got people that I went to, and I asked them to vote for something, and they did. And they gave us the money, and we're using that money in a judicious manner to improve public education and to improve things for our kids. I really don't care what they say in Tallahassee. The voters told me what they wanted, and we're doing it.
We agree on everything except for the don't care what they say in Tallahassee.
They didn't vote for this, the voters
I
here did.
understand, but we still work within a government structure that we're a part of, and we have to understand how the process works. And I'm not inclined to put this body and this organization in a worse position by making an emotional reaction to an unfortunate circumstance. And I understand we may not agree on that, and that's fine. We agree on everything that you said,
I'm not
except
going
for
to bend
the
to a
fact.
broken system.
Well, and I know that's your stance a lot of times on these things, but I, as this board member, I'm not ready to to take that approach in.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to keep this on each board agenda for this reason. We need to not lose sight of one thing. We're dealing with two issues here. One is the immediacy of the three that we have up there, but the issue doesn't go away. And so we don't want to go through this fire drill every time.
Right.
So I think if you come, I think you have to have a very prudent approach, and you really need to understand what are the ramifications to each move, because we can pound our chest and say we're going to ignore them, and
I'm between those two until you can tell me what the repercussions are.
that's what I'm saying. I think we need
Then I'll
to
make a
lay out
decision
here
which
all
way
the
I go.
alternatives.
Well, I
And
think
we
that's the
need
cooler
to-
heads that Mr. Weishauer
Right,
Well, until we
is
know.
talking
And we
about.
need to convey to Tallahassee, candidly up front, if it's going to be like this, we're contemplating ignoring the thing, and you don't want that. They don't want that either. Nobody wants it. But I think we have to keep driving the issue of either give us a short deadline in the future that you live by, or repeal it, which is what I would prefer. But if we don't stay on top of it, every meeting, I can tell you, we'll get through the crisis and we'll wait till the next crisis till everybody goes, now we're going to deal with it again.
And I would remind the board that while Mark and Veronica from DOE were here, staff took the opportunity to take them to Gateway and have them walk and
Good.
get kind of an initial assessment of that facility, because it is younger compared to the other three facilities, but at the same time, we feel like it is as great for a true comprehensive renovation because of the design of that site. And we had some favorable response from that. And what Mark has said is that once we get this process finished, we would go ahead and initiate Castaldi on that building, on that facility, because you don't have to wait. If we get Castaldi approved in December, that doesn't mean we have to build in January. We would have that kind of in the bank, so to speak, so that when that comes up in our building plan, we'd be prepared to move forward. What I would just ask for the board to potentially consider is that, staff has done the work with DOE. I've reached out personally to the commissioner, both by phone and by letter. Mr. Krebenbacher has also worked through the governor, as you guys requested him to do. Let's let this process work this week. And Mark and I will give you an update on Friday. If we don't have a favorable response, then we can reconvene and regroup and decide what we do next.
One thing I'd like to say on this, and I think Tim was close, not quite there, but some fights are worth fighting once we get to that point, and I'd put that in that category. The other thing is, I think there's a trend in Tallahassee which I completely disagree with. Tim touched on it a little bit. I completely disagree with him. No offense, Tim, but the part about the principal and doing and going on their own, but the principal is under the Osceola County School District, and as we see more and more control taken away from the local system, that's very troubling to me. We're taking more and more control away from the local system and not putting it in the hands. So we have a situation here where, if you want to use the principal example, the principal's taking dollars that the school district gives him. We're taking dollars that the school district has raised, it's 100% public funds, and trying to spend them on our own public schools and having another entity tell us no. And I have a while I agree with going about it in the right way, I think you're 100% correct on that. I take some offense to having DOE, Tallahassee, however you want to call it, the legislature, continually say that we can decide better how you can run your school system.
The analogy isn't quite there, I agree, Ricky. However,
Oh, I do. It's going to get worse instead of getting better.
But I do want to say
however,
that,
but the thing about it is that, you really got to jump in, you got to know what you're jumping into before you take the leap.
Absolutely.
And so I'm ready to wait and hear what our attorney's going to tell us, and just analyze the issue, including, what we can expect moving forward. Okay? Not because we're going to do it, but because we just need to know. We just need to know. And if it is something that this board feels that is necessary for us to comply with our vision or strategic goals, then we should consider it. I don't think that these things are all set in stone. There's this concept called constructive breach in law. And basically is that, you could break a contract when you accept the consequences that come from it. And a lot of people do that. That's part of what, some people break a contract and they'll, in real estate, and they'll just forfeit the deposit. And you know it. So that's pretty much a better analogy here, you know, than the principal thing when they're an employee, and we don't have the same relationship, so it doesn't quite fit. But the main point that you're making, I agree with, and Ricky agrees with, is that we gotta know what we're getting into, and we right now, Mr. Weeder, we don't wanna let, you know, we want the cooler heads to prevail until we find
Then we need to
information.
be, calm, cool, and
Yeah.
collected. I think that's 100% right on.
You assume they're smart and they care about what happens here.
Actually, no. Actually, we're taking the balls in our court right now. So we're going to think about how we're going to hit it back.
And here's my follow-up. We all want the same thing, and we're actually all on the same page. We're just reading different paragraphs, if you will, and some of us are a little bit ahead of others on where we're at in this story. And I'm all for taking the fight if it's the right fight to take. I'm all for us taking a very firm stand. Ricky, I couldn't agree with you more on the idea of maintaining local control. Sure. You and I 100% agree on those philosophical points. But I would add also to the superintendent's timeline of what's needed is, Frank, you know, this board, as you can tell, is contemplating and posturing to a place of taking on a battle that we need to understand all the sides
Why
of.
do you think I'm saying, guys,
I know.
let's.
Well, I know, but my point is, with all of these other aspects that the superintendent, Mark, and everything to do is, we need to make sure we have a very clear understanding from you on all the legal repercussions that come and funding repercussions that come, because as we think about the fact that it's local dollars, local school board, local school, we would all make that argument. But tied to our existence is also state dollars, state funding, and a state constitution, which actually creates our existence in the first place. And so we need to make sure we understand that other side, and that's my big thing. So I need to understand that from you, and I think we all do. And I'm not adverse to really where any of you guys are. I'm just not maybe as far along in the, you know, it's time to flip the switch, if you will. I just think we've got to do a little bit more research. I have to have a better comfort level of what the risks are that we're taking. And then, truth be told, we need to have a strategy in place of what the steps are beyond that. What happens when we do it? What are the repercussions? How do we go about this? What if we do wait? What are the cost factors that we're going to realize if we don't move forward and we have to duplicate efforts downstream? So I think we're all in somewhat of agreement, just different places, and I know we all want the same result. I have no interest in a federal or a state government telling a local government how to do things within their jurisdiction. And certainly am all for maintaining the concept of hometown rule when it comes to these type of things. So it's not a just do whatever Tallahassee says for me, but it's also making sure that as much as we want them to honor our side of the equation, we need to make sure we understand that there is a state government as well, that we need to understand their side of the equation.
For the record, nobody at the Department of Education has been elected. We all have.
Great.
Anything else on this topic?
No,
Board?
sir.
Thank you guys for all your work.
Staff?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Mark.
much.
I'm sorry you had to go through all this. I think it's been a lot of time and effort and money. Really, it's been a waste for us, but we're playing a game.
Been a lively discussion.
It's very important. We'll keep it moving.
One
I'm sorry.
technical question, because I've heard two things here. Is August 19th the deadline or September 19th?
We established September 19th.
So it's not this Friday?
It's
But they're getting a
September
call
19th.
back on Friday or something.
That's what we're
We
anticipating.
were
Okay.
told
hear.
that we would have
Okay.
an answer this Friday.
Oh, okay, that's what I got confused on, what the,
Right.
since we have the same,
September the
roughly the same
19th
days.
is not a line in the sand. It's if we're going to hit the project according to the current schedule.
Okay.
That's when we
So
would
they
really
could call
have to
this
begin
Friday
work.
and tell us we're good to go?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
I have a question.
I just didn't understand.
Who else is dealing with this right now across the state? What other district is caught up in the Castaldi rule
There are
changes?
several. The ones that we know of are Miami-Dade, Orange County Public Schools, Mark, do you call Lake? Some West Coast county schools, Pinellas, I believe.
But I mean, like facing it today like we are, not like, hey, of course the rule change affects everybody, but I
The
mean,
last update that I received from Orange County was they had actually a package in before the rule change that was rejected. Before they changed, before they moved the cheese, as Mark kept saying. It was rejected because they had some newer buildings. They submitted additional information as similar to what we have just done, and they just got a favorable ruling.
okay.
Okay, well, that's good.
That sounds like a good plan.
Okay, we'll move along to redistricting. Mr. Jason Lindsay has joined us at the table. Jason, would you give us an
Sure,
update?
real
Be the most
quickly.
popular guy in the county for it's all over.
Oh, I'm just,
That's gonna be you, Ricky Booth.
No, it's
absolutely.
you guys this time.
Real quickly, I was asked by Mr. Clinch and Ms. Blake to come give you a brief update where we're going from here. The parent letters are going to be mailed out the week of August 22nd through the 31st. There's going to be about 4,100 letters going out. We're in the process of producing those right now to hit the streets.
Would you mind sending us those letters
Sure.
before they go out?
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. Thank you.
Are they the same ones we got in the packet the last time, the last board meeting?
I believe so, but they're on letterhead now, so we should.
Oh, they're on letter,
Yeah.
oh, they were on letter.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I've talked with Dr. Pace-Post, she knows. As far as redistricting goes, I met with Mr. Clinch, I met with Rhonda, and they went over what they want to do with the high schools. And I've thought more about it since then, and I was going to see what parents said, but there's some I've got a fundamental problem with the fact that, number one, we are now all elected district only. So they're looking, and I'm looking at it now from a very intimate perspective, because my neighborhood is zoned for Celebration High School. Prior to that, it was zoned for Osceola High School, which are both in my district. Now, my neighborhood is looking under the new plan to be zoned for Poinciana High School, which is not in the district that I'm elected to represent. And in 2006, there was a federal lawsuit against the county commission because they said that if you don't have single-member districts, and you're running at large, everybody is, a minority couldn't get elected. That was their criteria. The county law spent a lot of money, and then they went after the school board. They filed a suit against the school board. The school board settled with them. Part of the settlement, though, at the time, if you look at the geographic districts that District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is, they're not exactly like the county commission districts, because the argument made to the Justice Department at that time was that it's not a population versus population thing like it is with the county commission. It's a question of school attendance zones where schools reside within those political districts. One of the unintended results of having single-member only districts is now only staff represents the entire county. None of us do. We represent our, now, which is not saying we don't think like that.
We
but
make
are-
decisions for the entire county.
I know we do, but we are elected within our districts, though, and that's deliberate. I just think that, and because, till it hit my neighborhood, I just have got an issue with the fact that I think that if somebody is going to school within District 1, they should be able to stay within District 1. Now, I understand there's capacity issues.
That's never worked that way, though, Jay. My kids were zoned for OHS, which is yours,
Right.
and I mean, because the district line, the school district lines are
Wasn't the
circumference
decision,
around.
Clarence and I have a lot of people
Yeah,
that are
like St. Cloud, we
constituents
got-
that are back and
I'm just
The
forth.
looking at-
school is in his district, we probably
Correct.
split the kids.
correct me if I'm wrong, Clarence, but aren't they the same boundaries between the county commission and the school board?
I think there may be some slight
There's
differences.
I thought they were very close.
It's
I think they're very
close.
close.
Was that correct?
But
They're not exactly the
Gateway
same.
is in my district, and I bet 90% of the kids.
It's like my school, I go
I'm just
there.
Well, I
like
go
you
to
said.
OHS and I go to Gateway.
Because it hit my neighborhood,
Yeah.
it had me thinking about it from a different perspective than I ever had before. So I'm just.
So what, you want to change the voting district?
No, no, not at all. I think
He
that.
wants an enclave where
I
he
think
lives.
I think the attendance zones.
Think he must, are you talking about, by the way, it sounds to me like you're discussing a proposal for rulemaking here. In other words, that you're
I'm
saying.
talking about
you're-
something that's impending. I'm not looking.
No, I
at-
understand that, but to address it, you're saying is that the board can research and adopt a rule to maintain schools with a certain district voting boundary lines.
I think, yeah, I mean,
Right?
if a family wants to go somewhere else,
Okay.
that's
No,
different.
that's.
Yeah, we got
That's how you
choice.
develop this. Here, I'll tell you this rezoning is changing a lot of other places, from districts to districts. That's not,
Oh, yeah.
yours is not the only one.
I know,
If you look
it's-
at everything in, right here, part of settlement going all the way through, a lot of District 2 is going everywhere. Here's my opinion. I haven't thought of it too much, just right now that you brought it up, and it's that, but political boundaries and what we do here on the board are just very, very distinct. They're just very distinct. I just cannot even think of scenarios where all of a sudden my decision-making process really hinges on a school being in my voting district or not. I just don't. I just don't even care where the parent lives if somebody calls me any more than when I look at the districting plans that are being proposed. And my questions are, do we maintain, we look at transportation, do we maintain demographics? Because we definitely want to continue, having, that interaction, for maintaining our diversities in our schools and keeping that the synergy going between our cultures that is very rich and very unique in this country. I just don't. I mean, I just don't know whether I would put that second to having this neighborhood and staying in this district, in this school.
And I wanted to voice my concerns.
But I think you make a good point.
I'm not
saying
going to dig more than that, but I wanted y'all to hear it from me. From my
But
perspective.
Mr. Weeder, then help me understand a little bit more your point, your position. Why is it important then for schools to not be part of the redistricting plan based on a political boundary?
Well, first off, I'm not convinced that, demographics, neighborhoods are where they are, and just because one neighbor is different from another, in my opinion, doesn't mean they're not going to perform as well. I never bought into that argument from the get-go.
It doesn't answer my, okay.
I look at it from the perspective that, well, for the most part, I will give this board credit. We're not terribly parochial, but parochialism can and does weigh in. We don't know who's always going to be sitting in these seats either. And people, for whatever reason, when you get single number districts, then whatever, if it's city, county, school board, that does weigh in. And you want neighborhoods also to build allegiances, just like Clarence, you guys grew up with OHS. Tim, you grew up with OHS. You got my neighborhood for the last 10 years, we're going to Celebration High School. Now you're pulling those families and sending them somewhere else. And I appreciate the capacity issues. I know we got capacity issues, and I get that. I totally get that. And staff nobody's doing anything wrong. I'm not criticizing the process. I'm not criticizing what anybody's doing. But my job isn't to think like staff. My job is to think like a board member. And that's what I'm doing.
And I would just say that
Right.
this is a part of the redistricting process. Rhonda and Jason and the team have met with each one of you individually to talk about kind of where we see things from a perspective of balancing capacity to open the new school. We're going to have to move some things all the way around, take advantage of that same opportunity to balance the capacity at some of our other schools and take full use of the seats that we have. At the same time, we will certainly take into account all the individual conversations that we've had with board members. The next step is to start gaining public input. They may have some great insight into potential tweaks to the maps that we may want to make, suggestions that they have. Rhonda and the team will do the maps, decide what that does to both numbers of enrollment. We do look at demographics. We do look at achievement. We talk about all means all, and I think my actions have demonstrated that I'm totally committed to that. But at the same time, we want balance across our schools and across our district. And so that's a part of our goal, to try to make good recommendations to you as a board when it comes to that point. But this process is 3 months long. We have from now until November
And nobody might say
to
anything
have
except for
input and make
fairness.
decisions
I
and
realize that.
revisions to that plan.
I just want to respond to Jay Weeder. I think you make some very good points, specifically when you mention about, the judge's order on the lawsuit and how they consider the divisions different than they did with the county commission lawsuit. I just haven't read that to really, really understand what is meant by that.
You haven't been around.
But obviously, there is a political component to the boundaries that we have that are significant. But here's what I want to say is that, the voters, okay, the children obviously are attached to the voters. And so, no, I think that I'm going to think a little bit more. I mean, if you push this towards a rule, I'll be fair and open about it,
willing to
because
see what
there
comes
is
back.
some merit to what you're saying. I just want to tell you that on the record.
Okay.
Mr. Tapper.
Do you know how many out-of-zone requests were not honored this year? Or can you find that out?
We can find that out. Tom isn't in here because he's on the other conference call.
It's not very
But
many,
I
I
have to
don't
tell
think.
you, it was a very minor few. We actually were able to open up enrollment at Celebration High School because they started out under enrollment, and so we had about 71 kids that we had first put on a waiting list that we were able to take in. The only couple of schools that have still been very, very tight have been Celebration K-8 and Harmony K-8 because of the nature of those attendance zones. But almost everything else has balanced. And that's what, again, I would encourage you to talk to your constituents about. Now that we're choice, we have been very open and flexible with choice, and it's worked. As many students have left as have gained from different programs. And I have to tell you, I'm very encouraged because we are getting back, I think it was like 91 McKay scholarship kids this year who were in McKay programs last year who were entering our schools. There was another significant number for homeschools, and we're also looking at charter and choice to see who's leaving, who's staying, and talking to our schools again about that responsibility to market their programs and achieve success with those. So we'll continue to work through that process. And always throughout the redistricting process, as you can remember the last time we had some high schools, sometimes you as a board decide to grandfather in some students, and we provide transportation to both communities, to both schools for a period of time. The point is, you're never going to make everybody happy, but our goal is to reach consensus for something that makes sense to provide balance in our schools, but also choice for parents and kids that we will do our best to satisfy.
Mr. Weister.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing up your concern. I disagree with it, but I appreciate you bringing it up, and I think that's the value of having the board and the discussions we have is there's varying viewpoints. I've never, and I don't think really any of us have, but I've never made a decision on anything based upon where the people that are voting for me are from, nor do I think ever in the context of I represent District 3. I've never thought that way. I've always thought I represent Osceola County. I'm on the Osceola School Board, and every decision I make impacts the entire county. Regardless of the DOJ lawsuit, which I don't happen to agree with anyway, their opinion, if you will, is irrelevant to me other than the fact that it's binding on us from a voting and election standpoint. Beyond that, once the vote is over and once I'm elected or any of you guys are elected, none of the boundaries matter to me anymore other than the county boundary. And so for me, I can't see ever trying to create a situation where school zones specifically align with voting lines. And I would never imagine, and all of us have had this happen. If somebody called me from District 2, I've never said, call Kelvin. And I know you deal with stuff in 3 and I in 1 and everyone all over the place. I think it's a very flawed approach if we start to think that we represent areas of the county as opposed to representing the county.
But you're not always going to be in that seat. I'm not always going to be.
No, I understand that, but I think part of the importance is that we set precedent in how we dialogue about these things so that hopefully those that come behind us understand that this body operates above the political fray and we don't make decisions or think about how we govern or lay out the district lines within a zoning perspective with how it aligns with our voting. And the other part is, and Clarence made the point about OHS, is that elementary, middle, combination schools and high schools, the boundaries are all over the place. I mean, none of them really line up, so you're never going to get it right. I had someone call me the other day about Sunrise. Well, Horizon sits here, Sunrise sits here. Horizon technically is in District 3, Sunrise is technically out. You could throw a stone between the two buildings. I mean, so to me, I don't care. If someone call me from Celebration, I'm going to want to talk to them. Someone call me from Harmony, I'm going to want to talk to them. Parkway, any school in between. So I understand your point. I respect it. I just don't agree with it. And I think that as a district, we need to make these decisions based upon what's the most effective and efficient use of our resources countywide and do nothing that aligns with whether or not it is or isn't in a voting boundary.
You guys have anything?
I'll just say briefly, St. Cloud High School is about half probably District 4 and half District 5. This new high school is technically in District 5. It's right on the line. It's going to be about probably 90% you. So I mean, I don't think there's a way to make efficient and effective use of our taxpayer dollars.
To be fair,
and I'm not that worried about it.
And to be fair, it is seldom, ever, does it become an issue or a consideration. These political boundaries and anything that we do. I mean, it's really extremely rare. Only when we're districting what's happening right now. But short of that, it just doesn't come up. So it's not like we're superheroes here that we just avoid being parochial. It just doesn't really fit in how we do things here. It hasn't even.
And I would agree with that, but to a certain degree, I would also suggest that don't expect every board follows us to necessarily be the gold standard.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yep.
Real quickly, the information that's being sent out will also be posted on the Planning Services website and all the schools impacted websites as well.
All right.
Did you ever present what you were going to present?
That was just,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is not a criticism on anything staff is doing.
What about the community meetings?
Okay, that was good.
Thank you.
The community meetings,
Jason.
are they in there? Do we have some already scheduled, like in Narcousie? I'm
They're-
going to get a lot of questions in Narcousie because we don't come
They're in
down
the
very
board
far.
packets if you want specific dates.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And all those schedules will be on the website. Schools are starting to form their
Yes.
committees.
Thank you.
All right, so the next topic is Michigan
Okay,
Avenue.
yes, our Michigan Ave Elementary School update. Mr. John Quattrone with Song and Associates is going to give us a high level of project update. Go, John.
Thank you.
John, welcome.
Oh, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let's see if I can determine which way this clicks. Okay.
Did you have copies of this presentation for us so we can write on it?
We did not print any
I can
copies.
follow up with hard copies.
Well, it's a lot easier when they do them in here so we can make notes as they show.
Yeah, we can get those printed and get them to you.
Well, I don't need one now. If I don't have it to write on it, I'll make my notes.
Yeah, I think the takeaway is next time, make sure
Next
to have
time.
in advance so they can be pre-printed.
Got it.
Presentation.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the overview of the Michigan Avenue Elementary School at about the 20% level of development. So some of the topics we want to look at is basically a project overview, touch on the process that we've used. We're going to show you some renderings of the concept at this point. We're going to look at both concept site plan and a civil engineering site plan that drills in just a little bit more into the civil engineering. Look at the overall floor plan
That's a good pen.
structure. Talk about some community use opportunities. Identify some shared savings by combining the elementary school and middle school dining building. Look at the schedule and then answer questions. So it's a 948 student elementary school. It will have a shared dining facility with the St. Cloud Middle School, which is right next door. It'll have a central shared chiller plant that can be expanded in the future to add capacity for the middle school improvements. Has a full play area that an elementary school in this district gets and full PE component. It does have some community use potential that we'll show you. The program's got 3 ASD, which is a type of VSC classroom, and 2 VPK classrooms, and that component is configured around a safe courtyard, and we'll show you what that safe courtyard looks like.
I've got a question.
Yep.
The central shared chiller plant, so when it's all built out between both schools, 2 chillers, 3 chillers?
I can't tell you the number of chillers. I know that our engineering team right now is calculating the capacity required for both schools, and that it's going to be designed so that additional chiller or chillers can be put in place into that chiller plant. But I don't think we've actually calculated the number of chillers yet.
You're 20%?
Yeah.
Okay.
3 skills labs, one of which is STEM related, and it involves about 11 acres of site development. The process, we want to emphasize that we've had a lot of user input, and we've had 5 intensive user workshops that have ranged between 2.5 to 3.5 hours each, with representatives of all these different groups that you see: food and nutrition services, facilities planning, IT, the school principal certainly, one of the assistant superintendents for the middle school, curriculum.
Who's there from the city of St. Cloud?
Do you recall?
We
Mark?
had separate meetings with the city of St. Cloud with, at the time, Joe Helfenberger, the city manager, and Andre Collins and Veronica Miller. Thank you.
We obviously had facilities director, the SDOC project manager, the curriculum leaders, the ESC representative, the building department and fire safety department, and transportation and utilities people. This is a concept view of it at the stage of development that we are at, with the shared dining to the left and the 2-story classroom building, new classroom building to the right, and they're both new buildings. And that's a slightly different view, looking a little bit further down the 2-story building. I can see this is squashed a little bit because of the TV portion, but this is the concept plan of the site. And let's see, do we have a laser? I think we do, yes. It shows on a wall, but it doesn't show on a TV screen. But basically, the blue buildings, the dark blue buildings are the new buildings. The light blue building is an existing building 3 that will be renovated, and they will be connected with a connector. And the parent drop-off will occur in front of building 2 with a long drop-off canopy for very good stacking. And with the bus loop coming in on the other side, and then with a service spur coming off that serves the back of the of building 2, which would be receiving and things like the trash collection, things of that nature. And on the civil engineering side, we have a little bit more detail. Over to John Porter to talk a little bit more about the specifics on the civil engineering.
Sure. And I guess the big concern here that's been expressed to us is traffic on Michigan Avenue. A lot of people have complained, and we're aware that there are some issues out there. With the site plan, what we tried to do was modify it to increase the amount of on-site stacking the best we could within the limitations of our site. You'll see a serpentine. You'll see a serpentine loop there that allows for a maximum amount of cars that we can, double wide stacked for parents to come in. This is the 20% plan here. We met with staff, and they expressed concerns about the parking stalls being on that loop. Since this plan, we've been working on trying to moving the staff parking to the top of your screen there and separate that from the parents to try to make this as efficient as possible and maybe not give parents opportunity to kind of pull into a parking stall and slow down the loop, or have difficulty with staff coming in at the same time as parents and mixing and having difficulty getting into the parking stall and into the classroom to serve the students. So that's kind of been the main focus. We do have a traffic engineer on board who's going to be doing a traffic study here soon now that school's back in session, and once things stabilize, he'll get out there and get all his traffic counts and advise us appropriately. The bus loop that we have coming in the backside, we hope that that'll help out a little bit with Michigan Avenue. That will be built in the second phase, obviously, since we have an existing building that will need to remain in service. The design team is looking at temporary bus loop and parent drop-off so that we can keep the school in operation while things are under construction. So we're in the process of working through all that, and we'll be communicating that with you guys as we move forward.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
And we'll get you through the rest of this overview pretty quickly because I know we're pressed for time. This is the floor plan layout of Building 1, which is the new classroom building. So the administration area is to your left. The media center is to your right, which positions the media center basically at the midpoint between administration and Building 3. The ESC Safe Court, the ESC and VPK classrooms go around that court with direct access outside, and it is fenced off with gates that have emergency hardware. Art and music are where you see them there. Second floor, basically that's an intermediate grade level for the most part. It's obviously served by an elevator. The shared dining, you can see how that works. The kitchen area has a lot of shared equipment, but the serving lines are separated and the dining areas are separated, which means that the elementary school dining, they go to their serving lines, they dine on their side of a folding wall. Middle school does the same thing on their side of a folding wall. The faculty have their own individual faculty dining areas, and we've calculated the restroom capacity to serve all of that that's going on. Building 3 is a primary grade level. It's an existing building that will be renovated. There is a link which is enclosed so that the entire academic portion of the school is all out of the weather. with the PE office and PE areas you see noted there. When it's community use, we've done a number of different seating arrangements, but this is banquet seating, which will seat in excess of 850 people around 8-foot diameter round tables with movable chairs. We've calculated the shared savings by combining the middle school and elementary school dining is about 1.3 million compared to 2 separate buildings, which would have a lot more redundancy, obviously, to build 2 buildings instead of 1 building. Current project estimate is 22.5 million, including 400,000 contingency. The schedule right now is, and I apologize that that's pretty small for you, but basically we're on schedule right now to meet a bid date of December the 15th for the documents to go out on the street for bid with a CMGMP January the 4th. And we've done the 208 form, and that's just the document there to the right is the back half of the 208 form, but basically we meet the DOE guidelines for net to gross ratios and all the things that DOE required. So that's basically the summary, and we'll turn it over to you for any questions.
Anybody have good?
Where's the entry point for the shared cafeteria? I was trying to see that when it was up on the screen.
Let's go back. There are two entry points, since the laser pointer doesn't work on the screen. From the middle school side, that must have activated something.
That's the touch screen.
Can't even get close to it.
Don't think about it or it'll move.
Right. The middle school side enters from here, the students do. The elementary side enters from here. So they go into their dining area. We calculated all the exiting, so there's ample exiting. Middle school does the same thing on their side of the folding wall. And the middle school is set up a little bit more for performances, so there is a small green room for performances that they may want to do. When it's in public use, for community use, there are 2 porches here. And that allows it to function for 2 different kinds of events, or be opened up and function for 1 very large event.
Sure. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sorry that it got a little rushed, but we appreciate
We'll
you.
move right into Harmony Middle School A. And Mr. David Torber.
I certainly hope there's a representative from Moss and Associates here today.
They better be.
Somebody want to come up?
You're bad.
All slide. Good afternoon. We're going to be as brief as we can be because I know you're pressed for time. So we have a very quick design update. We've got a lot of information about budget and where we're at with kind of the cost. So without further ado, I'll just jump in. Here you see the site plan, very similar in every respect to the site plans you've seen before. Really the only significant difference is that in this most current site plan, the bus loop has been separated from the track. But otherwise, you'll find that it's very, very similar to.
We through the Army Corps of Engineers already.
We expect to get, that's a little later in the presentation, we expect to have that permit in January, which will be a little bit in advance of what we were projecting in March.
Awesome.
Again, design update on the elevations, again, very consistent with what we've shown you before. There really hasn't been any significant change there. This is an image of the interior space that's between the gym building.
I want to know who's going to trim all those crepe myrtles in there.
Patrick's volunteering for that.
You and I will be doing it.
So that brings us to the budget analysis. Just to kind of get us kicked off here, as you all may be aware, the project started out with a budget of $28 million. Very, very early in the process, we did an estimate based on our own historical cost database that suggested that the more appropriate budget for the scope should be about 30.8. we took the next step at the schematic design, and we went out and solicited or got an independent third-party construction manager, not Moss. This was before Moss was selected. They did an estimate, a full-blown estimate, came back with a $33.8 million, kind of going in the wrong direction over time. So then Moss has gotten on board, and they've been working very, very diligently. So I think we're going to turn it over to them and let them come up and talk to you about it. The end of their story ends a little bit better than mine on the money. So.
At least you're honest.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
I don't know how you work this, but
There you go.
that looks about right. So our initial budget was the 100% design development budget, and it came to 35.2 million, which is, again, going in the wrong direction. And then in August, we did a 100% CD estimate, and the construction costs were 35.78, and that's about 500,000 more than the initial budget before that.
These are all typos going in that direction.
We wish. But however, in that one, we added a building, which was the outbuilding, the concessions building was added to that. That was a major portion of that rise. Now, something you don't see here, as we've continued to work on this since we submitted these for the board, you'll see that we continued to work. We had a meeting last week with staff and Schenkel Schultz, and our 100% construction with accepted cost VE has come down to 34.6 million. So we started heading in the right direction. That's 1.1 million less.
Now, what are you not including in the project that was included? What did you take out?
No, it was no.
You said something I didn't hear.
The roof.
We took out did we take the outbuilding away?
Yes, the
The
concession
outbuilding,
building went away because of code requirements.
But then we turned the field around to
Yes,
make
sir.
it accessible to bathroom facilities.
Yeah, we need the restroom facilities because the athletic amenities are more than 200 feet away from the main building. So the code kicks in for having those additional.
But we've
restrooms.
eliminated that.
No,
Yes.
No, that's correct.
Yes.
I met with the building department, and we went over it, because we had gotten some comments with South Florida Water Management. We actually had to move the baseball field and flip it with retention ponds. When we did that, the baseball fields moved closer to the gym. The building department's quote is 500 feet, not 200 feet. We meet that 500 feet, and we were allowed to eliminate that concession building.
Okay, so when we have a baseball game, or when you have a softball game or whatever, where are those folks gonna utilize the restroom, and where are we gonna have a concession?
Sounds like they'd have to go back to the main building, to the gymnasium.
And how far away is that from the bleachers?
500 feet.
500 feet.
Want the Coke cart.
Put some porta potties out there, is that what you said?
They have a Coke cart.
I'm fine with the cart,
Concession
I'm just
stand.
wondering about the bathroom. All right.
Just real quick again, the deliverable to the SDOC, we plan on giving the GMP on November 15th to staff, and then we're looking for board approval December 12th.
How much you think below 30 million your GMP will be?
How much, over 30 million?
Below 30 million, I think your GMP will be.
I'd like to see that, but I don't think.
Wait,
we're
I
gonna get there.
got faith in you. You built a high school for less than 35 million for me.
Yeah, but that was back when I was a young man.
You're still a young man.
I guess to Mr. Weider's point is that from 28 million to 34.6. And then, so.
You gotta go to
maybe-
where
maybe
they get to
something-
28, though.
That's what,
Yeah.
right.
And that's where we're moving to now,
Yeah.
based on
Okay.
Good.
how the budget was developed.
So some of the scope differences between the two were the building 3, the outbuilding, the bus loop, front entry modification, and refinements in design. So we'll just go quickly through that. And then she's going to tell you how we arrived at the budgets.
So during the 100% design development documents, which were in really good shape, we wanted to go out to the market and validate the subcontractors. So we submitted it to about 200 subcontractors. Of that, we received about 2 to 5 budgets within each trade, which we felt was very good to validate where we were with the cost. And of that, we ended up meeting with the major trades, concrete, steel, roofing, just to make sure where the numbers were tracking. In that design development, we presented about $1.5 million in cost savings to staff that worked very hard with Schenkel Schultz and Moss and staff to kind of come up with those items. At the 100% CDs, we went back out and we validated the changes with just a couple of the major trades just to make sure we were still tracking in line with that budget. Go to the next. This slide is, as Wade said, we had a meeting last week. Next one. Yeah. This is a little bit different than what you're seeing. We had a meeting last week and presented some additional savings. I think, yeah, this may be yours, and then I'll.
Is the site work included in that number?
Yes. Yes, the CD budget was $35,786,000, and during the DD, which is in your packet, we accepted about $555,000 of cost savings suggestions. And then during the CD that we reviewed last Friday with staff and with Schenkel Schultz and the team, we ended up accepting another $1.1 million in savings to reflect about $1.7 million in savings from the DDs to CD stage. And then there's probably roughly about another 200 plus or minus of additional savings that are still out there that we're trying to quantify.
So we can, and I may have missed it because I was reading, but are we eliminating the gym or considering eliminating the gym?
There are a number of VE suggestions that have been presented by the CM, and no, to answer your question, we are not eliminating the gym. We need a gym. However, we have provided VEs for each of those.
The idea is not unlike what we tried to do when we did the high school. If the $28 million target or lower budget target is to show you the various paths that you can take to get there. I don't think anybody on the team advocates for eliminating the gym, but you have to, I think we owe it to you to put it on the table as a path if you want to get there.
Well, I guess my question will be as close, with our proximity to the high school, is it feasible to have a dual use gym or not?
It would be very challenging because of where the student enrollment is now at Harmony and just their coverage of the PE space. There's very little time in the day that gym is not in full use. And the same would be true after hours with the different athletic sporting events that are happening. I mean, I'm all about shared use when you can.
Sure.
I don't know that it makes sense in this case.
What about performing arts facilities? I mean, does this school have an auditorium component to it?
Typically, middle schools do not. I think if
But
we keep going, there's some comparison to Westside K-8, which is truly our middle school prototype, and then I think we can kind of see where we stand, perhaps.
That's right.
So I don't know. We can go through the.
Oh, wait.
That's all right.
You good? Sorry. I jumped in on you.
So we've talked about those. I guess we can run right into the prototype.
Compare. Yeah, we did do some, put some comparative data together, which is on this next slide with the little chart, just to kind of show you the numerical differences between Westside K-8 and middle school AA. You'll notice probably the most significant difference there in terms of the size is about 6,000 square feet. There was some, direction to enlarge the gymnasium, to increase some seating in there, so that building got a little bit bigger. Those numbers, I believe, reflect the outbuilding, which is, it's a very fluid situation, so some of this information is changing a little bit. This just sort of outlines, and I'm not going to go through every one of them, but outlines some of the things that are a little bit different that, can certainly contribute to additional cost in the project. If you have any questions about any of these, please ask. I'll be happy to delve into them further. One of the big components when you start looking at the actual numbers and the estimate is the site cost. Now, I know there was a lot of discussion at the very beginning of this project about was this site an appropriate site? And certainly when you look at the numbers, it suggests, oh my gosh, this is a very expensive site. Well, when you compare it to Westside K-8 in just sheer dollars, it is, but you have to also keep in mind that the site on the right, Harmony AA site, is 33-acre site. Westside K-8 is a 21-acre site, so it's also a bigger site, and that extra size of the site accounts for a significant portion of that cost differential. So I just wanted to make that clear because I know there was a lot of discussion about wetlands and all the things that do go with this site, but it is a bigger site overall. in terms of its size. But that certainly accounts. You can see there's a pretty significant difference between West Side
We just need to make
site.
sure Miss Torrance from the county flies her mosquito plane over that side of the pond right there about once a week during the wet season.
Is that before or after she trims the bushes?
Yeah, right, yeah. You know what, if you asked her, she probably would.
So, this is really, I think, Moss's slide. I think the intent is to demonstrate to you that they're going to go out and make a very significant outreach to the trade contractors, local community, and solicit more bids. But I think
Yeah, this event actually happened. We ended up sending it out to over 300 subcontractors. We got about 50 subcontractors that did attend, and it was well received. School district had a representative there as well from staff. ABC actually attended, and they're very excited about the school and working with the school district. So we will do another trade event to continue that engagement with the subcontractor base.
so. This is just a real quick schedule update. Based on the schedule that we're working towards, the idea is to have a GMP here in front of you at the beginning of December. You can see the Army Corps, we're right on track, right, John? As far as we know, too, we're expecting that permit in hand by January, which is a couple months in advance of sort of the planned schedule. And you can see the dates for construction commencement and completion of the project. So, I mean, that kind of concludes the overall presentation. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I don't know how much time we have, but.
No, very good. So we do obviously have some budget challenges. We're taking a very deep dive to find everything, putting everything on the table. Next point will be to meet with the main stakeholder for the middle school, Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Allen, to determine what can go, what has to remain, and research further additional items. And the value engineering cost reduction exercise is an ongoing exercise that will continue through the construction phase. I've had discussions with our chief financial officer to give her an indication of where we're at with the project budget, and we will continue those discussions to determine how we go forward with the project.
Any comments or questions?
I have a question. Mr. Allen, how much are gyms used in middle school aside from PE? I mean, I know there's intramurals, but during the day, aside from PE classes?
They're used for staging areas in the morning and afternoon for drop-off and pickup. They're used for assemblies and, of course, filled during PE time, like right now, because of the heats. The gyms in middle school are packed right now. Inclement weather.
So, I'm not saying eliminate it, but it's 20% of our cost. And I have to imagine that spending 20% or $6.7 million on a gym for a middle school. High school, it's not a question for me, to be honest with you. Middle school, I struggle with it a little bit more, particularly because we have to continue to find ways for us to save money as we're building these schools and keep up with growth. And if my decision is between having extra $6 million to spend on student stations in another area of the county or making sure that every one of our middle schools has a gym, I gotta be honest, I struggle a little bit with that just from a thought perspective. Not only with the idea of wanting this to be within a certain range on our budget side, but also just, from a question of, it's nice and I get it and we want it, but it's expensive. And so I'm just telling the board, I do struggle a little bit with that.
I would go back, and I know, go ahead, Clarence. No, go ahead.
I struggle, I guess I have a bit of a problem with this and some other projects we've done. I don't know yet where the 28 million comes from, and we all get this expectation in our head of some number that's pulled out of the air compared to a school that was built 10 years ago. It's a useless number as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at some here says it ought to be 33.3 with an escalation in here. I don't know if this 3.14 is good or if 1.14 or 6.14.
Can you go back to the slide?
But somewhere, we set really bad expectations
That shows what the
sometimes.
proper escalation
And then we end up,
should
you know, it bugs me a little bit when I go through this thing and I see cost savings, cost savings. Cost savings to me is a reduction in cost. It's not a reduction in the building. That's a reduction of scope in a savings based on a reduction of scope. So I don't really know when I look at documents with expected cost stage value engineering, which is a 1.1 million, did we reduce cost on what was there by half and we take out another 600 because we didn't build a building? So it leaves me a little bit, a scratch in my head. I'm not sure what's going, and I'm not picking on Moss or Shingles. This is over and over. It doesn't matter who the players are. But I think we do ourselves a huge disservice when we come up with budgets that, quite frankly, are not close. We got two companies did estimates within, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million at 35 and 36 or 34 and 30, I don't remember what they were now.
And those were very comparable,
Very-
based on where the stage
I
and the
mean,
documents were at.
right, so those were close, and those are $7 million higher than our expectation that was
Sure.
set.
The 28 million is an aggressive number based on the fact that Westside KA construction was 24.4 million.
But
So that's
10
an
years ago.
escalation of 1.5% to get to that 28 million. And the average escalation is 3.09%, which would bring us to closer to the 37.6 million.
I want to go back just real quick to the gym, and I know I don't know which board member has said it, but I know I've heard it here before. We have discussed a little bit about, equity across the district when we say, hey, we look at all our middle schools have a gym, and now we're going to build a middle school based on an unrealistic expectation that seems to go well and above and beyond, what the quote-unquote budget was, and say we want to pull the gym because of that. I have questions about the gym as well, but you answered most of them, just in a short answer earlier. So for me, I'd struggled not to put it in there, but I'd also love to see that number to come down.
When you
as
talk
well.
about the equity piece, that's
Sure,
why
when we
I
talk
said
about-
quietly to
when
you,
we
they
talk about
don't
every
have a
middle school that
concession
we
stand and a
built,
bathroom.
I'm fine with
They do have gyms.
dumping the concession stand.
I remember when Neptune didn't have a gym for years, and they finally built one. And I guess it bugs me to continually build schools, knowing we're gonna go back in 3 years and rebuild something anyway.
So if we go
And
back-
keep the thing a construction site for,
So is it going to be, if we were to do this, say, if I look at these numbers and say 6 million, is it going to be, if we come back in 3 or 4 years and say we absolutely have the gym, it's going to be 10 million? Or 12
Escalation
million.
is going to continue to increase as we go.
And you're not geared up to be
Projections are, in the next 10 years, the market will continue to escalate heavily. In some areas, we're seeing escalation as much as 40%.
And you know what, to that point, we're talking about this escalation. I don't want to get into the details in that. We can probably in a future workshop. But I just can't get over proportionally the cost of this gym over the, in proportion to the overall project. I mean, that's.
No, I understand. No, I get it.
And I understand that you're a very proponent of the gym, and so
No,
was I.
no, I'm-
So was I until I see what Tim brought to our, and by the way, actually, when I saw this number, I was already but what I want to understand more is, I'm probably going to need more context into this part, okay? Is there something else we can do? Is there a way to make or is it the type of thing that needs to be done this way, or it really wouldn't work at all?
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that you can do. They all have pros and cons to them, and so I'm not sitting here advocating for any of these necessarily, but you could reduce the number of classrooms you have. Now, that's going to have the ramification.
Well,
You
just
can't
bring
house as
portables
many students.
What can you do with the gym?
No, I'm talking about what we can do with the gym. Is there a half a cost option?
Yeah, actually, it's
obviously that doesn't compromise safety.
It's right down.
No,
there.
I think it's a great
I mean, but
conversation.
right now, as it stands,
It's
this
right there under
amount
option.
compared with the total budget, it's really
I think Kelvin's response to that's going to be getting a shell doesn't do us any good.
Okay.
right. We wouldn't. I don't know if I.
And maybe he's talking about, is there a smaller size gym that would work?
Well,
or a more value.
If you recall, we initially made the gym bigger to get some additional seats in there. You could take that back out of it you could look at some of the finishes. But, you know, look, guys, at the end of the day, there is a minimum. I'm not talking about you can cut that number in half.
Then it
You
won't
might
be a
be able to
gym
get
anymore.
10% out of that number.
Yeah, that's what I
here's-
figured.
here's part
Anything
of-
short, it won't be a gym. I get it.
Right.
But as it is, you know, over 20% of the total cost.
Part of my concern too is, you know, the fact that other schools have a gym should not drive the decision of what we do with future schools. Just because prior decisions were made, they could have been bad decisions. In elementary
Or
schools.
the conditions are different now.
Sure, but elementary schools don't have gyms. So if we use the heat argument, then why are we using it in elementary schools? And I understand there's a different way that they function and they interact and they play, and they don't have intramurals. But if we're going to pick an argument, which is heat and staging, then why are we not having that exact same conversation we're talking about designing an elementary school? Because it's still the same heat, and we still have to do staging. And I want the gym. Don't get me wrong. We all want the gym. I'm just saying that I think as a board, we're faced with regardless of the number and regardless of the school and the location, none of that matters to me. It's more of a bigger conversation of if these are the type of costs that we're going to continue to incur, which we are, it's a reality of the market. I think the board has to begin to have some very serious conversation about what is it that we really feel is key and needed as we're building these schools. And if it's going to cost us $5, $6, $7 million to build gyms at middle schools, and we have 2 more middle schools that we're talking about building in the near future, is that money better spending it somewhere else instead and building more student stations? To me, it's just more of a, it's not about this, it's about the big picture of how we spend resources.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring up a couple things. Number one, first, I do support the gym, but you make a good point. You can't be everything to everybody. But one of the, for better or worse, in Osceola County, the county itself has no Parks and Rec department. There isn't one. And in a lot of communities, the only thing that they've got is that they've got our facility. You go west 535, other than West Side K8, Celebration High School and Celebration K8, there's no ball fields, there's no gyms, they're ours. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it's just the way it is. The point I want to make is maybe, to your point, Tim, about a better way of doing things, maybe we approach the county and say, okay, unlike a high school, a middle school gym does have some availability that a high school gym doesn't always have. So maybe we, just like they did at Parkway Middle School with the ball fields and Neptune Middle School with the ball fields, we approach the county about maybe some sort of a joint use agreement where maybe they provide some of the funding. We own and operate it. When it's available, we turn it over to the community for whatever, like we do now anyways. But it's about time they kick something in because they've skated. I mean, other than they got Austin Tyndall and they've got the softball complex, but there's not a lot of county recreational facilities. So.
And actually, we already have that model in place in the Harmony area. At the Harmony Community School, we share playground space with the community. We share the park area there.
That's not the county.
At the high school, we share the tennis courts.
With the community.
With the community, because those are things that they wanted as amenities. They were willing to help pay for those. And so I certainly think it's worth approaching both the county and the community in something like that. I also would just call your attention to this page that says option C that hasn't yet been priced out. There are some other things that could potentially be done to the gym. I remember working with all of you and with Shingle Schultz and Gilbane through the process of getting the high school project in budget. And if you remember, our first number was pretty high compared to where we were. And we heard from this board, you don't want to reduce program scope, but you do want us to look for efficiencies. And in partnership with Mark's leadership and Shingle Schultz and Gilbane, we were able to do that. I feel fairly confident that before the next board update on this particular project, we can do the same thing with a little bit more time with our partners with Moss and Shingle Schultz. So I would, ask for word from you. We don't want to reduce scope, but we understand a gym may not be essential. There's some partnership opportunities we can explore.
Absolutely.
To try to get this to a more reasonable.
And with Harmony, you're looking at a community that, the gym at the high school wouldn't suffice, for any community needs, right?
Right.
It's used to. So adding the gym at the middle school,
Isn't necessarily value added.
Isn't necessarily value for the community. However, again, I would struggle to eliminate it completely when we've made an effort, and not this board, but boards before us, and the leadership before us has made an effort to say that we value our intramurals at the middle school level, we value the staging area aspect, we value the assembly aspect, and we value the indoor PE aspect of what a gym brings. So
Well-
that's where I'm, and I get all the arguments.
And on top of that also, and I can share this from my own personal experience, Kissimmee Middle School and Denjon Middle School are great examples. I mean, those gyms, independent of all those things, you've got all kinds of youth sports that are not ours. I mean, Florida Basketball Volleyball Association, I mean, those gyms, those facilities are getting used.
But my point was that wouldn't make it that big a difference in Harmony because you already have the big gym at the high school and you're kind of out in Harmony.
But that's good, it's not gonna get, the population's not gonna shrink though.
No, I get that too.
We'll be building a gym in 5 years.
Are there any, aside from St. Cloud Youth, are there any organized sport leagues or anything like that that
Yes,
take place
there
out
is. For your comment about not having a county recreation department, the city does.
Right.
The city does have a rec department. They have a rec league, and they have two civic center and the Little League field, all located next to each other on 17th Street across from the hospital. I'm there all the time.
Right.
So there's two big basketball courts inside basically just steel buildings. They're not pretty, but they're very functional. And then all the Little League fields are there. St. Cloud has one of the largest Little Leagues, not in the state, but in the southeast.
Right.
And they do a really good job there.
I just didn't know if there's anything further east. I was aware of all the St. Cloud stuff.
Harmony, St. Cloud is struggling now to split themselves. They really do need more happening in either the Narcoursey corridor or the Harmony corridor or just east side in general. That's a problem that we have the biggest Little League in the southeast almost because it's too full.
If they've got a
So there
middle
needs to be more activity going on the east side of town. It's just, I think St. Cloud still almost has that small town feel, and it's really not a small town anymore.
Why don't we do a metal gym? You took a good point, the Civic Center, it's functional, why not do a metal gym?
Engineered building.
Yeah.
What's that?
Engineered building.
Yeah. I mean, we've given the flexibility from SREF for a while. I mean, this is.
Are you
might be
giving
a
that?
perfect example.
Because you already have the shelter in place for that area, which would be the big gym. So
And the
are you
schools.
allowed to build something like that? Now I don't want to look.
We could. It likely would not be EHPA, which is currently what we have included in this project. Another value engineering.
Hurricane shelter.
So we already have a hurricane shelter there. So why would we
I
need to
think
build
that's an
this
easy.
as a hurricane
Well-
shelter? And with that, how much
It's a
cost would
regular
that take
gym.
out?
I mean,
We did
play
coordinate
ball.
with safety security in the early design phase of this project. and
What
they
I'm
did
saying is give us the
indicate that-
function without all the added cost.
Right.
The 34.6, that EHPA has already been taken out.
Okay.
So
That gets you to 34, but scaling that gym way back.
that's one of the things that got us to the 34. It's not the only thing.
That's what I'm talking about is probably that shell only option or not quite.
No.
That was
Gym is
further
included in the-
reductions.
No.
The gym is included in the 34.
Now, I want to say this, Board, if we were to build some sort of steel building,
Right,
we'd have to take some effort to
Make it look good.
to
Make it not
to
look
work on
like a steel
the
building.
aesthetic piece of that.
And then you start to raise.
And then you raise the cost.
And here's the thing, I mean, and to Mr. Weissire's point is that, looking at, again, the proportionality of cost, our needs with student station, our growth, our projected outlook, we have to really consider whether we go forward with this cost or whether this would be the last middle school gym we would ever consider.
Well, hold on,
Considering
Mr. Chairman.
considering the hit it'll do on the budget.
We were building gyms at middle schools when middle schools had 900 to 1,000 kids. I mean, look how many kids we're going to service at the middle schools. We have to take that
And you
into
know what?
account
That's
as
a-
well.
And that
That's a
doesn't
good
take the community
And that's a
into
good
account.
point. We need to see what.
This isn't a 900 seat middle school like Neptune was when they built the gym. Now Neptune's 1,400 kids and they have a gym.
That needs to be considered. We got to see what that's.
Part of the reason I was asking about the youth sports and everything as well is if we're looking, with this school or any school, if we're looking at building these gymnasiums, what should we be looking at from the county, from the cities, from YMCA, from Boys and Girls Clubs, for some of these ancillary partners that say, hey, we could really benefit from this? Again,
And we don't have that in
high
St.
school
Cloud
gym,
yet.
right, high school gym, we know that they're utilized tremendously. Middle school gym, I know there's intramurals, I know there's certainly after hours and during school. I have to think that it's probably a $6 million investment that gets utilized at a lower proportional rate than a high school. So
Mr. Allen, would you-
I'd like
to be able to
Yeah,
provide
so
us
I'd like to
with a
see how
report
to-
of just kind of all activities that happen within a gym, so we could, would you be able to do that?
We should also look at how this will fit into the future, middle school plans and, and start looking at our projections saying, okay, we're gonna have $6 million gyms in there, minimum.
Right.
Or else we're just gonna go ahead and not do it anymore.
Well,
So,
and
which is
what Mr.
okay.
Allen just pointed out
I mean, if that's, because every location has its specific needs as well. Every community has a different.
I would also, Mr. Booth, you're probably best suited for this, but.
Well, I don't know.
But that side of town exceptionally well, so what about exploring conversations with the county, with the city, with the YMCA, with the Boys and Girls Club, whoever? Are there partnerships that we can create to try to provide some additional savings to our capital budget while also making sure that the facility is utilized to the highest extent to serve the community at large? So I think there should be a meeting pulled together quickly with Harmony, with some of these other stakeholders, and say, if we were to build this, who's going to be a partner? Who's going to help it?
Maybe the why.
Yeah.
Well, I can just, the Y would be great. We need a Y in St. Cloud. I think we need our Boys and Girls Club something. I mean, all we have is rec league.
You're looking at the chairman of the board for
Well,
the
there you go.
YMCA.
So bring him over.
There is a model for that.
But certainly, I think we want as much as we can get.
Be the chair of the waves. Oh,
I
Yeah,
approached the YMCA concept when I was the principal at Harmony High School because we were
Yes,
trying
you
to
did.
get a pool,
Yeah,
competition
the pool,
pool in that
yeah.
area. Very much like the Nona model.
Mark said, get a
But-
pool.
Board, anything else?
Well, the good news is, we're
Final
proactively working through these issues now to identify these well before this project goes out to bid. However, we are well into the production documents as well.
Yep.
That's coming to a close very quickly, so whatever changes we incorporate, we have a very short window to do that in order to maintain the schedule for this project.
Well, I don't know where everybody else is at, but I'll step out on a limb here. Since we're talking about districts, I'm going to be for some sort of gym facility at this middle.
Me too.
I'm going to be for it. So I don't know how we get there and how we work on that number, but I'm going to be in support of some sort of facility to at least make this middle school.
These are impact fees building this school?
Yes.
Okay.
By
the way, when you say good news, I thought you were going to say you looked on the table, found
Yeah.
$6.5 million.
$6.5 million.
Solved our problem,
And,
not.
in close discussions with our chief financial officer, we have limited funds. So if we decide to spend additional dollars here, that's dollars that we don't have for another project.
And that's
The team is very motivated to get to a number, knowing that we need to do so to have a project to move forward with.
And I don't say that to diminish our negotiating capacity, but I do say that to because of what you said of how far we are along in the production documents.
Production documents notwithstanding $6.6 million is.
Better than
I can see how that
better
can
than
change the
6.7.
landscape, and I can see how that limits us in terms of budget for future, and
But we're going to work on making that number less.
But
Yes.
I will, right, as it stands, I wouldn't be, I'm disfavoring that. However, you have 3 board members who wants you to continue exploring and try to make it better.
6.6
So you got your
is
direction.
better than
I do want to come
6.7.
back to
No.
Clarence's point at the
6.6 is
beginning, and I
outrageous.
imagine the 28 million number and the methodology we use, we won't be looking at that again
We're
because now
fighting
we're
for
building
student
schools,
stations.
we'll be able to use our own real-time numbers as opposed to.
Sounds like we're going to be using
Clearly, the
because
1.4% is more aggressive than we can be in the
Right,
market.
because I think that's a good point as we continue these conversations.
Yes.
Let's
Thank
start
you,
off
Jim.
on the right foot.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, so it's not
Thank you very much,
sticker shock.
Jim.
Can you find, how long